The second season of Ninjago, Legacy of the Green Ninja, is an extremely divisive season amongst the fanbase. The thing is that a lot of people absolutely love it, and a lot of people absolutely hate it for different reasons. And the thing is that I do find that extremely interesting. Because this was meant to serve as Ninjago's first initial ending to its actual show. It was never meant to go beyond this point until obviously LEGO did decide to renew it. But that's the thing, how did LEGO handle the final season by all accounts when it did come to their newest show? And that is what I want to explore today. I want to take a look back at Ninjago's initial ending and want to decide whether or not in the modern eye this is actually a good season or a bad season, because I do think there's a lot of different aspects that do go into that question. So let me not waste any more of your time and let's talk about the Legacy of the Green Ninja. So where are we picking up from after the event of Season 1? Well, the thing is that we're basically straight after those events. The city is in repair, the ninja are doing their best to help, but the thing is that they don't have their golden weapons. The thing is that Garmadon took them, but the ninja are being fundamentally reset because of this. They are without their weapons, so they also don't have their elemental powers anymore. They also lost the bounty, so they also no longer have a home. And ultimately speaking, they basically had less than where we saw at the very beginning of Season 1. But of course, the start of the season does address this whole concept. But to address the concept in of itself, we do basically need to get into the meat and potatoes of what this season actually is, and more specifically the most divisive aspect of it. The thing about Season 2 is the fact that the episodes are the most controversial aspect, because this season was basically split down the middle. You had the latter half of the season, which focuses on what everyone remembers and what most people love, which is the Stone Army arc. But the thing is that the first 6 episodes are what's considered nowadays to be the filler episodes. These episodes all surrounded the arc that all revolved around Garmadon and the use of the Mega Weapon. If you're not familiar, for one, I'm surprised you're even here. But the thing is that the Mega Weapon was the combination of the 4 elemental weapons of Spinjitzu, and Garmadon was able to create anything once a day. And it did cause all of these episodes to have different sorts of themes and different sorts of concepts all around them. But in my opinion, they most certainly varied in terms of their quality through all of these episodes, so I am going to do something that I didn't actually do for the Season 1 review. The thing is that I'm going to look at every single one of these episodes individually and give you my opinion on them accordingly. And I'm going to be honest, I have a theory surrounding the filler episodes that I will mention afterwards. But let's actually take a look through what the filler episodes truly were. We did essentially start right off rip with a filler episode. Darkness Shall Rise fundamentally wasn't. It was meant to bridge the gap between Season 1 and Season 2, but we definitely still had those filler aspects to them. We saw the ninja getting jobs, and they were able then to make rent for a penthouse that they simply couldn't afford. Also, while Lloyd was attempting to train, and Garmadon was earning the loyalty of the Serpentine. Meanwhile, the actual Serpentine generals were attempting to go after Lloyd in a way to go around Garmadon. The entirety of the episode was basically, like I said, just setting up further events. But to be perfectly honest, episode 14 just simply wasn't bad inherently. I think it is definitely a filler episode, and ultimately the entirety of the episode doesn't really have many consequences, but the thing is that it's just this episode that was meant to bridge the gap. So I'm not overly mad at this one, and it honestly does kind of get a pass for me. But of course, after this point in time, it is most definitely where the filler does begin. Episode 15 is called Pirates vs. Ninja, and in that one, you find that Garmadon resurrects the old crew of Destiny's Bounty, and in an attempt to have a fierce crew under his command. Little did he know, the pirates simply just wanted to take over, and they ended up going against Destiny's Bounty themselves. They tried to plunder Ninjago City, but ultimately the ninja do succeed in the end. But even though this is under the branding of filler episode, there are actually things that do happen here, such as the ninjas starting to use their old standard weapons again, which doesn't sound like too much, but is an actual continuity aspect. And the other thing is that Lloyd's powers are starting to evolve, and he even does Spinjitzu in this episode. So, like I said, even though it does have the branding of filler, there are things that do matter in these episodes. The one after this is called Double Trouble, and this is where we get introduced to the Bizarro Ninja. They are creations of Garmadon, and they are used to take down the ninja and also infiltrate their own bases. The thing is that it is an interesting concept, and it is really interesting to note that the Bizarro Ninja do look a lot like the younger corrupted Garmadon, but again the thing is that they are a very temporary aspect of the episode. But you can still technically say that there is something in this episode that does contribute, because Lloyd does get a much better control over his powers in this episode. Like I said, we do see his powers initially in the previous episode, but in this one he actually does have more of a control over it. Of course, he is better using lightning, we better get to see Earth, we get to see all these powers actually utilized a lot better in a lot of different ways. So again, there is a benefit to this episode, and like I said, there are some just really cool design details as well, such as also the desaturated spinjitzu for the Bizarro Ninja. Again, just all those little bits that do just make up to make a really interesting aspect. Episode 17 is actually Ninja Ball Run, and what's really funny is that Garmadon, on a technicality, doesn't even use the Mega Weapon until the end of the episode. The entirety of the plot is based around just the ninja going for a race, which you'll find in every single TV show. Garmadon only uses it in an attempt to cheat the race, so I do find that fairly interesting. But as I've said about all of these different filler episodes, the only thing about this one that you actually do get is the fact that the ninja do get the bounty back. And whilst that is a big aspect and does play into obviously later episodes, the thing is that this is the most inconsequential of the lot. So whilst I do still appreciate it for that very small snippet, I do think this is the worst one of the bunch for that reason. It's just simply the less of the bunch, and ultimately I just don't really care for races. Episode 18 is actually Child's Play, and in this one Garmadon attempts to revive the Grundle, and in the process he also de-ages the ninja whilst he is at it, and the whole episode surrounds the ninja trying to go about the release of the Grundle whilst also being kids. And I will say that is not a bad concept inherently, but again is definitely the definition of filler. But of course this possibly has the biggest aspect in terms of altering and having things ready for the next plot within the episode. And of course that is the concept of Lloyd actually growing up when the ninja also return back to their same age. So not only does it bring forward the prophecy that we've heard a lot about, but it of course brings Lloyd forward in a lot of different aspects in terms of his maturity, in terms of his style, in terms of everything that we actually know. So Child's Play is a very important episode for a lot of different ways, but it is of course still under the definition of filler. But we have got one more. And that is definitely one of the most controversial episodes of the bunch, which is Wrong Place, Wrong Time. And in this one, Garmadon attempts to go back in time to prevent anything from even happening. And the ninja of course follow through, and we get to see the events of the pilots played out, and we get to see the ninja fight to keep it all intact. And of course, again, by all accounts it's filler, and it does so much wrong in terms of the timeline, to the point where I think the writers don't even acknowledge it. But the thing is that in this moment, we do get to see everything play out. And the main consequence of this episode is the fact that Garmadon loses the Mega Weapon. So that is entirely the point of these filler episodes. It's just setting up these little smaller aspects for the latter half, and also making it so Garmadon no longer has the Mega Weapon. But that is the filler section of this season, and I do think it is very justified in being controversial, because all of these episodes, all of the things that do happen in them, are just simply very small aspects of them. The majority of these episodes were simply just your standard weekly villain of the week type episodes, so I understand why it does get the hate it gets. But honestly, personally, and I don't know if it is nostalgia, I really don't mind these episodes. I do think they're nice, light, and they're fun, and I do think you can just turn your brain off and actually have a good time. Of course, there are a lot of aspects you can consider, like how having the Stone Army arc actually being 13 episodes would have been better, but I do think, simply put, I am not overly mad at the concept of these filler episodes, and I do think they do serve a purpose, and more of a purpose than I've already mentioned. Like I said, of course all the episodes do cover very small things, but I do think a big aspect of this is the fact that the Mega Weapon did exist. The thing is that the writers needed to justify Garmadon having the golden weapons. They needed to justify him keeping the weapons around for long enough to where it actually had some sort of sense behind it, but also not have him for too long so it would interfere with the Stone Army arc. The thing is that they needed the weapons out of the way for the entirety of the Stone Army because they needed to repower up the ninja in accordance with that arc. So I understand why they exist, but I also understand why people don't like them. So I do just think on an overall, the first half of the season, whilst honestly very divisive like I keep saying, the thing is that I just personally just don't really mind it. I don't have an over issue with it. I don't have something that makes me viscerally angry when it does come down to it. I just think they're fun little episodes that I kind of just can enjoy once I'm just watching through the show. But again, that is just me. But let's now actually talk about the rest of the season and the stuff that people definitely do like. The rest of the season focuses on the Stone Army arc, and I do think that is very interesting. The Great Devourer had an effect when it did come to Ninjago City as a whole. Little did they know that Ninjago City was built on top of a tomb full of ancient stone warriors, and the Venom had the ability to wake up those indestructible army, and we get to see the fallout in accordance with it. All the while, Garmadon, who is now without the Mega Weapon, is in search of the Dark Island, a place where he believes he could get a new source of power, and the Serpentine, after they betrayed him, actually do end up not going along with his plan. But it doesn't matter, as Garmadon does find the island anyway, and he encounters the Overlord, the new big bad, and the person that the prophecy actually foretold. And the thing is that we get to see the Overlord promise Garmadon everything he ever wanted, and he gets to have control of the army in accordance, and he does begin his new plan. We see then the ninja react to this. We get to see them acknowledge that this island exists, and they go on their way to actually find this island and take down Garmadon once and for all, as they believe that there is more to that island than truly meets the eye, such as the Temple of Light, which could give them their elemental abilities back once more. And then of course that does proceed with the rest of the plot, where we get to see the power of balance actually shift between both of the respective armies. Of course it starts very much out in favour of Garmadon, and then it shifts towards the ninja, and then back towards Garmadon, and then more specifically the Overlord once more, and then it ends off with the ninja accomplishing their mission. And that's the very basic overview of this amazing plot. There is still so many scenes and so many moments that need to be talked about when it does come to the plot, and why it's so highly regarded. In similar vein to the filler episodes, each and every single episode has plot points, scenes and moments that matter so importantly to the plot, but the thing is that all of them are absolutely fantastic in so many different ways. Episode 20, or the Stone Army, we're introduced to Masako, and of course she is highly regarded as one of the most hated Ninjago characters, but the thing is that it was significant for that very reason. Emotionally speaking, it does a lot for Lloyd. It has so many different aspects and so many implications, and seeing Lloyd handle that kind of revelation is very interesting to see. And even apart from that, seeing the ninja have to handle a stone warrior when they physically do not know what to do with it, and not even by technicality defeating it, just simply sending it away, was really interesting to see. It's so interesting to see the ninja so overpowered and so outmatched, and watch them adapt accordingly. It's something that you don't really get in newer seasons anymore. Seriously watching the ninja struggle because they were at an inherent disadvantage, so it was fantastic for that reason. Episode 21, or The Day Ninjago Stood Still, is a fantastic episode because it expands on the one previous. The thing is that instead of one large stone warrior, it's an entirety amalgamation of the stone warrior army, like I mentioned, and we get to see again the ninja absolutely struggle in accordance with an army that they simply cannot defeat. All they simply could do was run away and protect as many people as they physically could. And the thing is that we get to see so many fantastic moments actually within this episode, and also one of the darkest things that we've ever seen as well. This episode always stood out to me because it's the one episode that really did approach a topic that I never thought they would have actually have done, and I think a lot of you know what I'm referring to. The scene of Wu and Masako when they were cornered in one of the skyscrapers. And to put it in a very nice way to where YouTube won't complain, they attempt to unalive themselves, and the fact that that is something that they actually do is kind of beyond me, and they were so outright with the fact that that's what they were doing. It's very shocking to me, but kind of does prove that Ninjago was going in a very interesting direction, and they definitely wanted to take it seriously. At the end of the day, this is a kids show, and they treat it as such, but the thing is that moments like that really do stand out, and definitely does give Ninjago that feel for something that honestly is very interesting. The Last Voyage focused on the ninja actually trying to get to the Dark Island, as that's where they realized that that's where the problem was occurring from, and we get to see them travel across the ocean in accordance. And of course, the very major thing about this episode is the fact that we were reintroduced to Zane's father. Dr. Julian coming into the story and having the story surround him for that episode was absolutely fantastic, and the analogy that came with it. Of course, Dr. Julian can never leave the island because of a sea monster, and watching the ninja attempt to free both him and Zane's father was absolutely fantastic to see. Island of Darkness focused on the ninja actually navigating their new surroundings. They of course were keeping an eye on the Stone Warriors and trying to keep out of sight. They were also, during an investigation, attempting to rescue Zane's Falcon, which was very nice to actually see. But in the process, they actually do find the Temple of Light, and we get to see the entire chase to actually get there. And once we do, we get this absolutely fantastic scene of all the ninja powering up, acquiring elemental blades, acquiring the kimonos, and Lloyd unlocking his golden power. This scene scene goes down, in my opinion, as one of the best things we've ever seen within the course of the show. I think all of the ninja, all the Stone Warriors, and Garmadon's reaction was absolutely fantastic. This episode is memorable, in my opinion, from front to back. I really don't think there's anything in this episode that you couldn't regard as peak. The Last Hope demonstrated all the ninja becoming overconfident because they got a power up. They infiltrate into Garmadon's fortress and they actually attempt to stop what the ultimate weapon was going to be. But the thing is that the confidence got the best of them, they ended up on the disadvantage and they actually ended up on the run from Garmadon. Even though they did secure the Helmet of Darkness, they actually never were able to utilize it to its full potential. Because for one, they never put it on, and also they never actually succeeded in their plan. Because they acknowledged the existence of the clock for the countdown to the final battle, but they never got there in time, the clock activated and the ultimate weapon was complete. So the ninja did become at a disadvantage, and they also even lost Nia. Again, every single scene throughout this episode was absolutely fantastic. The confrontation between Lloyd and Garmadon alone was absolutely fantastic in its own regard. The thing is that moment of Garmadon looking weak and Lloyd not being able to take the shot and the ninja essentially upset over it was absolutely incredible to see, and definitely is a scene that holds up to this very day. Episode 25, or the return of the Overlord. You see the ninja realizing that it is now or never. They need to make a full-on assault on Garmadon and the Stone Army to be able to prevent their plan. But in the end, they are ultimately too late. They have corrupted Nia, she is now evil, and they are well on their way to be able to take over Ninjago. And the thing is that the ninja are on a complete case of catch-up. The ninja get distracted by Nia, but ultimately speaking, even when they do catch up, and when they do believe they may end up with the upper hand, they ultimately never get it. The balance shifts towards darkness, and the Overlord is officially able to betray Garmadon, take over his body, and accomplish his own goal instead of Garmadon's. And instead, there's absolutely amazing fight scene between Lloyd and the Overlord, where Garmadon's attempting to help, but ultimately it doesn't actually matter. They take a lot of losses throughout the course of this entire episode. They take many different blows in a lot of different ways. And honestly, it was such an intense fight, such a harrowing episode, and such a fantastic setup to the finale of not only just this season, but the original finale to the show. Which of course is Rise of the Spinjitzu Master. We get to see the Overlord taking over Ninjago City. We get to see everyone reacting accordingly. The ninja coming together to find the golden mech to be able to make their way back. I mean, such a side note for one, but Lloyd's speech in this episode where he talks about how much he learned from the ninja and the importance of being strong and doing what they can was absolutely amazing. It doesn't even end there though. The ninja going in, attempting to save the day, obviously battling through the Stone Army, and ended up actually somewhat getting the upper advantage, but just enough to get Lloyd to the Overlord, where the final fight ensues, and insert that amazing battle between the two of them, and Lloyd ultimately saving the day, and the ninja being able to look upon the sunrise as they've realized they've saved Ninjago once more. But not just Ninjago, but Garmadon as well. Honestly, I cannot stress how good this finale was. It really does feel like this Stone Army plotline was really carefully crafted, because from front to back it's just so good. The thing is that there's not a moment spared and everything does have meaning, and I really do feel like it is reflected in just how well the reception for these episodes truly were. Now, whilst I have covered the plot, I do want to cover a couple other things before I do give an overall. The thing is that the plot means a lot, and everything does coincide when it does come to this plot. But the thing is that the characters are so important when it does come to this season as well. Of course, there are a lot of characters that just simply didn't get as much as others, and that is ultimately a shame, but I don't feel like any character in particular went unnoticed. The ones that definitely got the least were the likes of Cole and to an extent Jay. Of course they did have little aspects, but on an overall they definitely weren't the overall focus when it did come to the season. They did have some really cool moments, but I do think that's just kind of it. Cole didn't get anything overly unique in this season, it's just he simply had the aspects that everyone else did have, and there's nothing overly wrong with that because all the other characters definitely did need that spotlight. I do appreciate it for what it was, but I definitely do think he was the least utilised within this season, although I will say the Michael Jackson moonwalk was definitely a massive highlight for me. Jay for the most part was just simply interconnected with Nia. Of course, anytime anything happened with Nia, it affected Jay. There was nothing overly specific that did happen to him that did overly feel noteworthy, but he did definitely still go along for the ride, and he definitely did have aspects because of that. Kai was definitely also in this bracket, but things definitely did feel a little more personal when it did come to him, because of course Kai has been such a focus for a very long time. He definitely did have his moments to shine, but again, on an overall, he was very much just also the person that got plot because of the overall plot. There was never anything hyper specific to him, and I definitely do think that was just something that was fine, but I do think kind of goes unnoticed. From there though, I definitely do feel like a lot of the characters did get a lot. Of course, the big thing for Zane was the fact that he did get to meet his father once more, and he got to have all of these interactions accordingly. Every single scene we got between Zane and Dr. Julian was absolutely fantastic, and definitely did feel very satisfying, considering the whole mystery of his family beforehand. I do think, honestly, it was really nice for Zane, and it's definitely nice that he got something in this season. But of course, next season is where he got a whole lot more. Nia, of course, had the whole getting captured and corrupted thing, which I do think was fairly interesting, and I do think it's a lot, especially considering it's Nia at this current point in time. Of course, she does get a lot more later on down the line, and I do think that's another conversation for another day, but I definitely do think her actually getting something in this season was fairly good to actually have. Wu and Garmadon, I do feel like we're somewhat on the same plane, but Garmadon more so than Wu. Of course, both of them get to have Misako back in their life, and again, that's one of those things where later on, we realize how that's more significant. But of course, Wu gets to see everything happen with the ninja, he gets to see everything realized, he gets to see the prophecy actually play out, and I do think that was really cool to see. And of course, we get to see Garmadon realize that maybe he didn't want to be evil, but he just simply had no choice, so he did carry on. But we get to see him in the end try his best to help his son, and try his best to actually do good, and in the end he gets to be good, which I do think is fantastic on an overall. Garmadon definitely did get a lot of love this season, and honestly that is just quite standard for that character. But of course, nothing does stand out more than when it comes to Lloyd. Lloyd went through so much this season, it is unbelievable. He started out as just a kid who didn't know what to do with himself and ended up in a position where he was the ultimate Spinjitzu master. He had the power, he had the maturity, he had everything you wanted in the character. And honestly, his progression is so interesting to actually witness. And honestly, every single moment we did get with him was nothing short of fantastic. He definitely benefited the most this season out of everyone for obvious reason, and I can't be more happier for that fact. But I do just think, just generally speaking, the Ninja team just got so much this season. They really did feel like a team. They felt so interconnected. They had so many amazing scenes together. It really did feel like they were a properly functioning team. And of course, later seasons does challenge that concept in a lot of different ways. But this was definitely the most infallible the Ninja team felt in a very long time. Because of course, remember, after this comes the love triangle, and then you get them split up, and you get all those other different aspects. So honestly, this was the last time for a very long time where it truly did feel like they were fully unanimous and fully the team that we all know and love. So I have to give kudos to the season for that very specific reason. But I do think when it just comes down to it, the characters, especially on the protagonist side, were just handled extremely well. But of course, there is one other aspect when it does come to it. And that, of course, is the antagonist. Of course, you can consider it to be Garmadon and the Serpentine, but I talked about them more or less in the Season 1 retrospective. So for this, I want to talk about the Overlord and the Stone Army. I do think when it does come down to it, they're very much the standard generic bad guys. The Overlord is just quite simply evil incarnate. There's nothing overly special to this character, he's just the embodiment of all of darkness. I definitely do think there's an argument, and I do think it's a very strong argument to suggest that he's one of the weaker Ninjago villains, especially in the modern day, but it doesn't necessarily mean that he's bad. For the time, he was honestly really cool. It's just nowadays, we just have so many more interesting and compelling villains, and I do think he just kind of suffers for it. Like I said, I just don't think he's inherently bad. I definitely do think there are redeeming aspects to him, specifically in the second season. Of course, there is much more to the Overlord than the second season, but again, that's another video for another day. The thing is that he does just simply kind of pale in comparison to just other villains that we have got, especially how emotionally dynamic Garmadon in particular actually is. But moving on from the Overlord, I definitely do think the Stone Army were really interesting until the ninja got their powers back. The thing is that the Overlord Stone Army was obviously designed to be this indestructible army, but the thing is that they couldn't have that for the entirety of the season, so powering up the ninja of course basically made them just a standard army, and I definitely do think that's kind of where they fail, because it definitely did take away the unique flair to the army, but still regardless, they're one of my favorites to this very day, and I definitely do appreciate them. I just wish they maintained the power that they were set up to have. So whilst I definitely do consider the Overlord and the Stone Army to be weaker, I just don't think they're bad or even then drag the season down in any regard. I just think there's a lot of reason to suggest that the Ninja would just very much shine in this season, and also just later down the line, like I said, we just get more dynamic villains. But I do definitely think that they were solid, especially for a finale. I definitely do think they had that flair, and I do think the Overlord did serve his purpose within that season. But apart from the characters and the episodes, there's not really much else to say about Season 2. So let's actually get into an overall consensus. Because when you do take a step back and you look at this season as an overall, I really do think it's better than a lot of people do remember. Of course, you can argue that this is nostalgia talking, but I really do think every episode, including the filler episodes, do have some sort of benefit to them. Maybe that doesn't make them good. I mean, of course, the racing episode does exist. But the thing is that I do think every single episode does have something to it to give it some sort of enjoyable factor. Those filler episodes are just simple, dumb fun, and I really don't think there's anything actually wrong with that. I really do think they are enjoyable for that specific reason. And then, of course, the latter half is so dense and so packed with so many amazing things. I really do think it does have an amazing flair to it, and definitely did serve as a fantastic end to Ninjago at the time. This is not me saying by any stretch of the imagination this season has no flaws whatsoever. I really do think there are some inherent problems with it, but I just really do think the season to an extent does get a lot of hate, and I definitely do think there's a lot of reason for this to be considered a good season. But as it stands, that is my opinion and my look back when it does come to season 2, and I am going to officially pass it off to you guys. Because I do want to know what you guys think. Do you guys like Season 2? Do you think that this is a season that is very solid? Do you think the filler episodes is not as bad as a lot of people do make it out to be? As it stands, I truly do believe that the episodes are honestly fine. I really do think there's a lot of good to them, and I definitely do think that there's honestly just an enjoyable flair to them. And that is why I want to know if you guys agree with me or not, because I'm curious if I do stand alone on this. Because as it stands, I really do like Season 2. I really do think it's a fantastic season, and I think there's a lot good going for it. But like I said, I would love to know what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching this video, and I do hope you enjoyed. And if you do want to see more season retrospectives, please let me know, because I do plan on doing every single season. And if you did enjoy the videos, please consider subscribing. I love talking about Ninjago with new people. And if you do want to support the channel any further, which you do not have to, you could always consider becoming a channel member and joining the legends on screen. Thank you very much to everyone on here, and in particular Grandmaster Sensei 28208 for being an eternal legend. Thank you very much, my friend. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay,